Hello, my name is Zachary Griggs, and I'm going to take you through a demo of DataBlend and how it can integrate Sage Intacct and Salesforce, specific to a nonprofit use case where you're a foundation that is issuing grants to other nonprofit organizations. I've been with the DataBlend team for a little over 2 years, and I've worked with nonprofits still to this day. I work with nonprofits for over a decade, so very familiar with this space. So on the screen here, I'm logged into DataBlend, and I'm on what we would call our dashboard or our home base within the tool. In the upper left here, we have this favorite section, and there's two specific workflows is what I'm going to call them. These two here that we're going to go over today. The concept of a workflow is an integration between two different systems, potentially 3, 4 systems as well, if you need to do any type of lookups or you have multiple different sources or targets. But in this case, it's simply going from Salesforce to Intacct. The first one is going to be associated with grant disbursements. And so within Salesforce on an opportunity, we're going to use as our example, but it could be from any other objects that you're leveraging within your Salesforce system. You have some criteria, let's say that the grant has now been approved and it's now going to be issued, and therefore there is a cash disbursement that needs to be processed. Once that criteria is hit within Salesforce, it'll pass through that integration and it'll create an Intacct AP bill with on the finance side so that your finance team can process that disbursement. The second workflow is going to be related to grantees. So it's going to be whomever's receiving that disbursement. They're going to also be set up as a vendor within Intacct so that you can have the corresponding bills associated with them. So your financial reporting is accurate, detailed, and up to date. So I'm going to just deselect those, and let's kick off this grantee workflow. You'll see over here in the upper right, what it's doing is it's going to run through the integration, and it should take about 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute to go through. But essentially what it's doing is pulling data from my Salesforce system. So if I come in here, it's going to take this account list here, and it's going to go send that over to my vendor list on the Sage Intacct side. And so we're just going to give that a second to finish up. But if you're anything like me, you don't want to have to run this ad hoc or manually click that button whenever you want the systems to talk to each other. And so you have the capability to also set it on a schedule. That's down here. You can see grantee is currently set up on a schedule, and you can set that schedule to whatever you're comfortable with. You might want that to be set up to run every day, every week, once a month, whatever the case may be, and they're not mutually exclusive. So you can run it on a schedule, but then in between, let's say you're at month-end close, you want it to refresh this, you just simply click that run button like I did in the upper left there. And then the last quadrant, just to finish this up, is the credentials down here. And you can see this green dot indicates that you have an active connection to those systems. In this case, I'm connecting to Sage Intacct and Salesforce, and you can see my connection is green, so it is successful, and we're going to have a successful integration once it finishes. And you can see it finished up over here, completed with no issues. If I come over to Intacct, come in, and then I just click enter, you'll now see I'm filtering for recently modified, so you can see what was recently passed in here. You see all of those different accounts from the Salesforce side have now been created. Some popular criteria when it comes to Salesforce and Intacct integrations that you don't want to create every account. You only want to do it once they meet a certain criteria, such as having an approved grant, maybe a disbursement that's going to be processed. So you can also put that type of logic into what accounts feed between the system. It's really up to you to be able to model the integration using DataBlend around what your business process is. You don't have to change your business process to meet the criteria of the integration tool. In this case, you can see I put in the Salesforce ID as the vendor ID. That was just for convenience and what I wanted to do in this situation. If you wanted to use auto numbering or use some other ID that was set within Salesforce, not a problem. You really have full flexibility as far as what fields get updated by what between the systems. So again, you can customize this around what your use case is, and that will be taken care of during the implementation phase. So now what we're going to do next is hop over here into Salesforce, and I might take, let's say, let's do donor 3 here, and let's change this, and then it's going to be, instead of donor 3, it's going to be nonprofit org, and let's do it as number 3 as well. I'm going to hit save here, give Salesforce a second to save that, and then I'm going to go back into DataBlend, kick off that workflow, and then you can just see that that'll pass through that value onto the Intacct side. But while that's running, what I'm also going to do is talk about this cash disbursements workflow. This one's slightly different. It's going based on opportunities. And so if I go into Salesforce, go to my opportunity page, and let's go to all. What it's going to do is going to take these and send them over into AP bills within Intacct. I can have that criteria. Most commonly, when it comes to opportunities, we use the stage where it might hit close one. Maybe you have a grant that's committed and that's approved and now it's ready to go over to Intacct. So whatever that criteria is, though, you can dictate when you want to send that into Intacct. And it doesn't have to be tied to opportunities, and it doesn't have to be tied to that stage. It could be a checkbox for finance approval or disbursement ready. It could be coming from a completely different object and feeding into something other than AP bills on the Intacct side. But for today, I'm going to focus on opportunities to AP bills. So let's hop back over into DataBlend. While that's running, I'm actually going to kick this off. And you can see I don't have to wait for my grantees to complete. I already know that the vendor codes are set up, so there's no conflict. And these can run simultaneously if I ever wanted to run them ad hoc. But again, they can be on different schedules as well. So you don't have to think about them. You just set it and forget it, and it'll run on whatever that schedule is that you decide is what you want it to set up. So I'm going to let this run through. Oh, looks like grantee just finished up. So let's go and take a look at Intacct within here. Put in nonprofit. Here we go. Nonprofit org 3. So based on that ID, ties the two systems together, and you can see that my changes, in this case, I just did vendor name for visibility. If it's related to different billing addresses, it could be different contacts associated with it. Any of those fields that exist on the Intacct side that you wanted to update from Salesforce are supported. And we support user-defined dimensions, custom fields that you might add to the different records that are in the system, as well as standard fields. So there's really not many, if any, limitations on what can be updated on either side when talking about these two integrations. You truly have a tremendous amount of flexibility. Let's go back to the dashboard, and perfect timing, my grant disbursement workflow just finished up. So let's go in here, back to Intacct. I'm going to go to AP. Let's go to bills. And you can see in here are all my different bills populating. And you can see it's going to be associated with the proper individuals, the different vendors that it's associated with, as well as the amounts will pass through. If you had multiple lines, if you had some different dates and logic associated with them, not a problem. You can build all of that into the logic within DataBlend to accomplish that at a click of a button. So a big takeaway here is going to be that both Salesforce and Intacct, very flexible tools to integrate. DataBlend works really well in doing that, giving you the capability to really control that process and eliminate a lot of the restrictions that you might see with other integration tools. You're able to customize that integration to meet exactly what your needs are, as in this case, a foundation that's issuing grants. All right, thank you.